Secular sciences attempt to dethrone religion as the great explainer of reality. Is that better? Yeah. Which has been going on ever since, if you took History 101, Europe's Enlightenment and Darwin's Origin of Species, this tussle between science and religion, right? Indeed, as human suffering has increased, religion has been having a harder and harder time explaining the problem of evil and why bad things happen to good people. At the same time, for all its technological advances, secular science has been unable to explain something as basic as consciousness. There was one physicist, Niels Bohr, he said, for all our trying to break down, find the self, we found that consciousness has slipped through our fingers. Into that great contest between science and religion stepped our spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, who in 1962 wrote in his preface to the Srimad Bhagavatam. Now, before I give you this classic paragraph from Prabhupada, I just remembered something from, okay, you said senior, right? Senior. Okay, in 1964, we took our dates from the senior prom to the New York World's Fair. That's how far back I go. The New York World's Fair, 1964. And yeah, we dined at the Swiss Chalet, and then did anybody go to the 1960? No. You did. Did you go to the World's Fair? Okay. Do you remember the General Motors exhibit? Anyway, basically all the exhibits were promising us that by the year 2000, and we've blown past that 25 years ago. By the year 2000, we'll all be living in a techno-utopia. Practically speaking, we have just the opposite today. We have a techno-dystopia, where all the air has been fouled and the water polluted and the climate, monkeyed with, and it's crazy. Okay, so much for science trying to explain everything. They've simply, created things, bigger bombs right here in Tucson, right? My apologies if you work there. All right, so here's what Prabhupada said in his preface to this. He wrote this in 1962. Quote, human society at the present moment is not in the darkness of oblivion. Now he's saying, look, this isn't the Dark Ages. All right? It has made rapid progress, being very generous, in the fields of material comforts, education, and economic development throughout the world. Everybody's probably carrying a little device, right? This is so cool, isn't it? Not. But there is a pinprick. I love from Prabhupada. He uses this word twice in the Bhagavatam. But there is a pinprick somewhere in the social body at large, and therefore there are large-scale quarrels. More wars. More than ever right now. We got Ukraine, we got the Middle East, we got Sudan. I mean, it's always going on. Large-scale quarrels, even over less important issues. There is need of a clue as to how humanity can become one in peace, friendship, and prosperity with a common cause. Srimad Bhagavatam will fill this need, for it is a cultural presentation. It's not some dogmatic religious text. It's a cultural presentation for the re-spiritualization of the entire human society. Wow, is that a mouthful? But Prabhupada makes good on that. Whoops. Okay. Speaking of technology, don't desert me, my dear Bluetooth mouse. Okay. So Prabhupada wrote that in 62, and then he came in 65 to the West. You know the story. And then in 12 short years, Prabhupada was able to spread Krishna consciousness all over the world in 12 years. He was able to do that because of his profound faith in the scientific and universal principles underpinning his teachings. Profound faith, which joined our spiritual sentiments. We're all basically spirit, we're not matter, and we have the spirit is full of desire and passion. So Prabhupada his teachings were able to join our spiritual sentiments with a quest for the absolute truth that made complete sense. I mean, when you come in contact with the Vedic wisdom, it makes sense of everything, from God to ghosts and everything in between. Now, in his introduction to the Bhagavad Gita as it is, Prabhupada gave us, I mean, the Gita has been in America for like 200 years, right? Well, not quite. Yeah, almost. But it was just treated, I know when I went to college at UConn, back in the 60s, it was always on the occult shelf. Oculo oculare, oculi occultum, Latin, it means it's hidden. It's hidden. It's hidden because people didn't get it as it is. They were just getting it from some, Christopher Isherwood or what's his name? Anyway, Dr. Sarvapalli Radhakrishnan. They were getting it from a pure devotee who was letting Krishna speak for himself. So in his introduction to his Bhagavad Gita as it is, Prabhupada contrasts the English word religion, remember that's our title, Religion, Science, English word religion with the more precise, that's a hallmark of science, it tries to be very precise, with the more precise Sanskrit term, Sanatan Dharma. Okay, so here's what Prabhupada says about that in the introduction. Quote, the English word religion is a little different from Sanatan Dharma. Religion conveys the idea of faith, and faith may change, right? Let's see, what's an example? Jill Biden converted he was an Episcopalian, and then she became a Roman Catholic because she married Joe Biden, who was Roman Catholic. But that's really neither here nor there. Faith may change, or what's another one? Oh, yeah, anyway. And faith may change. One may have faith in a particular process, and he may change this faith and adopt another. It's superficial, these designations. Somebody is born in the Middle East, and they're likely to be born in a Muslim family, right? And then maybe in the next birth, maybe they're born in a Jewish family. In one birth, they hate the Jews, and another birth, they hate the Arabs. It all has to do with the body. One may have faith in a particular process, and he may change his faith and adopt another. But Sanatan Dharma, that's the more precise Sanskrit term, refers to that activity which cannot be changed. Now, to be sure, sometimes advocates of Eastern religions like Hinduism or Buddhism also tout the scientific and non-sectarian nature of their faiths, contrasting them with the sectarian and excluding attitude of certain Western religions. That's kind of a point of pride for Hindus and Buddhists sometimes. But Prabhupada points out that any religion that places belief above reason and rigorous philosophical analysis always degrades, sooner or later, to dogma and unprovable claims. My way is the only way. It just becomes very political. Now, in his commentary to the Srimad Bhagavatam, 1511. Ooh, that's all right. Nice to show you the Bhagavatam. But does anybody know what Srimad Bhagavatam means literally? How Prabhupada translated that phrase? Raise your hand.
Beautiful story of the Supreme.
Yes, isn't that great? The beautiful story of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And it's not just a story, it's history. But it's not just mundane history. It's a story, it's the account of that person from which and whom everything comes. Now, Prabhupada says in his commentary to Bhagavatam 1.5.11 that it's a critical science of spiritual values. Did you ever hear of a science of spiritual values? It's such a revolutionary idea. It's a science of spiritual values. What do we actually value? Do we value more this body? This body is very valuable. Human body is very valuable. It's got a facility for realizing God. But it's useless if I don't realize it for that, if I don't use it for that. It's just flesh and blood and bones and all that stuff. So it's a technical science of spiritual values. We want to value the spirit within, without which the body doesn't, if I had suddenly left the body right now, this body you're looking at would just fall off the seat, or and nobody would want to touch it. Dead body, a corpse, get it out of here. But so long as I'm in the body and talking and, doing all kinds of stuff, then it appears to be, oh, that's nice, I think. And so Prabhupada taught how not just to believe in God, just not believe in God, but to experience God. There's a difference between just believing and to experience God through the techniques of Bhakti Yoga. In Bhagavad Gita, chapter 9, verse 2. Rajavidya Rajagoyam Bhavitram Miramuttamam Pratyaksha Dharmyam Susukam Kartamavyayam. So in that verse, Krishna refers to the knowledge that he's revealing to Arjuna and to all of us as the king, Rajavidya, king of education, the most secret of all ignorance, purest knowledge. And because it gives direct perception of the self by realization. But that's if we're actually applying it precisely. Maybe I'm just one technology we have, technique, Prabhupada said techniques, is we chant on beats. So, but am I hearing when I'm chanting, or am I is the tongue just flapping and the mind's at the movies? Right? So we have to. And Krishna understands. He says, okay, from whatever and wherever the mind wanders, just bring it back. And hear my name. Listen. The most secret of all secrets and the perfection of religion. Perfection of religion. It's not just belief. You get God perception. Because it gives direct perception of the self, and we're part of Krishna, by realization. Okay. So when Prabhupada started this international society for Krishna consciousness, he stated his first purpose as, anybody know the first purpose of ISKCON? To systematically propagate spiritual knowledge. Yeah, it's an educational, that's why he started ISKCON. To systematically propagate spiritual knowledge to society at large, and to educate all peoples in the techniques of spiritual life, in order to check the imbalance of values in life and to achieve real unity and peace in the world. Now, Prabhupada did that. That was on July 13th, 1966, when he officially incorporated ISKCON. So he had an attorney named Stephen Goldsmith. This is in Lower East Side, New York City. And so Stephen Goldsmith was, since maybe March, and Prabhupada told him, and Prabhupada didn't even have a place to live practically, and Prabhupada said, but this attorney heard about this far out Swami down the Lower East Side, so he said, well, so he started coming, and then when he realized that this Swami was serious about starting an international spiritual movement, and Prabhupada said, we're going to call it ISKCON. And so Stephen Goldsmith said, what's that? So Prabhupada said, International Society for Krishna Consciousness. So Goldsmith said, well, that sounds rather foreign. People don't even know who Krishna is. And Prabhupada said, that's the point. People don't know who God is. He's all attractive. Aishvaryasya samagrasya viryasya yashashashriya jnanavairagya. What's the rest? Something. Anyway, so people say God is great, but how is he great? He's the most beautiful, he's the richest, he's the wisest, he's the most renounced, he's the most powerful, all these things. So Prabhupada said, that's the point. There's so many churches in America, there were more churches then, and but people say God is great, or they say in Islam, Allah Akbar, right? But who is he? How is he great? And Stephen Goldsmith said, I don't know. That's still a little foreign sounding, but Prabhupada said, no, ISKCON. And if I say God, they'll bring so many gods. Prabhupada was speaking of the people from the East then. So many, because in India, if you're a Hindu, you probably believe in many gods, right? There's many devas, many celestials. People worship Shiva and Ganesh and all these. And they are real personalities, but they're not the supreme God. It's Krishna's too, Bhagavan Swayam. Okay, in other words, Prabhupada saw how the scientifically grounded practice of Krishna consciousness can change people's lives. If you think I'm goofy now, you should have seen me 60 years ago. Yeah. Can change people's lives, regardless of our religious affiliation or ideological orientation. Yeah. It's transcendent. It transcends politics and religion, which identity politics and all this religion, people are identifying and they're killing each other because they identify with the body they happen to be born in, and therefore I hate those bodies. And I'm not letting those bodies into our country either, because I don't like them. All right. Now, since I've said that much, I just wanted, here's the full disclosure. On that note, full disclosure, the title of this talk. What was the title? Anybody remember? Krishna consciousness. Religion or science or religion. You can do it either way. The title of this talk, Krishna consciousness, science or religion. Science or religion, it's a question. It's a trick question. No fair. I tricked you. Authentic Krishna consciousness is both. It's both scientific and religious. As Prabhupada notes in his commentary to Gita, chapter 3, text 3, there's a few lines here that I really like. Prabhupada says, quote, religion without philosophy is sentiment. It's just sentiment. Or sometimes fanaticism, right? My way is the only way. You guys are infidels or you're heathens or whatever the other is that you don't like. While philosophy without religion is mental speculation. And that's what we got going on with people who fancy themselves scientists. Oh yeah, maybe it came from a chunk or a big bang or a cloud of crud, or it's all, just keep that grant money coming, folks. If you believe that, we'll tell you another. A person who is spiritually healthy has a head filled with truth and a heart filled with love, ultimately for Krishna, the source of all. Okay. Now, so it's both. It's religion. It's religious. It's got the passion of the heart, and it's got the truth that the head needs. And I'm thinking the next time I give a July sometime, probably. Yeah. June. Oh, June. Okay. So if I make the team in June, we'll see. If I make the roster. I'm thinking of, because even though it's scientific and religious, we can practice Krishna consciousness. I can practice Krishna consciousness very unscientifically. Yeah. So, and it works the other way too. Or I can take the science of Krishna consciousness and speculate and throw my own speculation into. So it cuts both ways, and that's another possible class. So before I take your questions and comments and reflections, I'd like to thank a great sannyasi in our movement who comes from Tashkent. Is the capital of anybody? Any geography buffs here? Tashkent, capital of Uzbekistan, one of the stans, one of the former Soviet socialist republics. So he is a scientist. Now he's a spiritual scientist, but he was a scientist. He went to, he grew up in Tashkent, and then he went to university in Moscow. And then, this was during the 80s, when the whole Krishna consciousness, before Glasnost and Perestroika and, all that stuff came along. He joined when the whole thing was underground. Underground. I think his former name was Vaidyanath. Yeah, Vaidyanath. And so he got a book, underground. There were no books then. They were just, people books were smuggled in, actually. They were smuggled into the USSR. And so he's very thoughtful devotee. Yes, super, super thoughtful. So he wrote an essay, and if you'd like to read the whole thing, I'd be glad to email it to you if you approach me afterwards. And the essay is called "How Not to Turn ISKCON into a Religion," in the sense of a mundane religion, full of externals and politics and trappings and jockeying for position and power, and that's all. That's the last thing we need, another sectarian religion, right? Okay. So we have 4 minutes left. Does anybody have any questions or comments? Yes, Prabhu.
It's beautiful. Thank you very much for a very nice presentation.
Yes.
So you mentioned this Krishna consciousness is a science that can be practiced very unscientifically. I wrote that was a very nice statement, because sometimes we see that people come and they like it, they like the way it feels, they love all that, but then when they get into the practice, so much of the science part of it goes away. It becomes a ritual. I just gotta chant these rounds, and it's very mystical to them. It's very sentimental, rather than if you apply these scientific processes the proper way, then you get the proper result in your consciousness. So maybe you could kind of elaborate as to some of those practices and how they are scientifically, why they're scientific.
Okay, yeah, why they're so. Well, like when Prabhupada initiated me, for example, way back, 1971, AD, July 17th, Saturday in Detroit, Michigan. He drove up from New Vrindavan, and I knelt before Prabhupada. So Prabhupada would ask us 2 questions before he just chanted on the beads, right? Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. We've got a lot of rounds done because Prabhupada chanted on a round of Hare Krishna on beads, 108 times the full mantra. And then your name would be called. Pradyumna said, Richard Hall. So Richard Hall came before His Divine Grace. And so he said, so what are the 4 rules? What are the 4 rules? These aren't just arbitrary, no-nos, taboos. No illicit sex, no meat eating, no gambling, no intoxication. Very good. And how many rounds on the beads? 16 rounds, at least, Prabhupada, at least. So when you agree, when you commit to the path of bhakti, the scientific path of bhakti yoga, you agree to avoid those 4 activities, not for no reason, because when we avoid those things, that allows our natural cleanliness, truthfulness, self-control, and mercy, kindness, mercy, to allow. That's who we are. The soul is full of goodness. It's full of love. It's full of light. But in contact with the material energy, it's been all perverted. Yeah. So that's an example of scientific principles that we follow to get the result of love of God. And then the 16 rounds, that was that Prabhupada determined that that's what people in this fallen age could do. Because before the first initiation in September 9th, 1966 in New York, on September 8th, Prabhupada's talking about, okay, so tomorrow we're going to have initiation. And the devotees didn't know what he's talking about. Initiation, what's that? So Prabhupada said, well, that means the spiritual master takes charge of the disciple, and the disciple accepts the spiritual master as God. And then Prabhupada just let that sink in. Nobody said a word. And then Prabhupada, he just exited out the side door of the storefront, walked up to his apartment. Everybody who was in the room, just like with their mouths like that, said, "Hey man, did you hear that? I don't know if I can do this, man." So Wally said to Howard, "Howard, would you please go up to Swamiji's apartment and ask him what he meant by that?" And that's what Prabhupada was waiting for. He didn't want them to surrender blindly. He didn't want blind followers. So Howard, this large-bodied English TA, teaching assistant, professor at Ohio State, Swamiji, is what you just said, does this mean that the spiritual master is God? So Prabhupada said, no, it means that the disciple accepts the spiritual master as good as God because he's God's representative. Is that clear? Then he's not God? No. Anybody who says he's God is dog. So, yeah. So anyway, so Prabhupada was talking to them about how many rounds they should do too, while they were stringing beads. We're going to have initiation tomorrow, and there were no beads. So they went to Tandy's bead shop, and they got these beads, red beads, green beads, blue beads. They're just wooden beads, and then they had to drill a little hole in it, with a little drill so they could put the string through the beads. And so while they're doing all this, it took them, a long time because they were fasting for Janmashtami. So Prabhupada said, in my spiritual master's institution, the Gaudiya Math, the devotees chanted 64 rounds. So the devotees looked at Swamiji and they said, 64 rounds? Okay, how did they do that? So So Prabhupada said, but since Prabhupada saw their consternation, so he said, but I think you can chant 32 rounds. 32 rounds, that would take all day. All right, 16 rounds, minimum. Yeah. So that's how 16 rounds came. If you're an acharya spreading Krishna, who's qualified to spread Krishna consciousness all over the world, you can adjust the rounds to the quota that people can actually do. And even then, I mean, I chant 16 rounds a day, but it's not easy. I still got 3 rounds left after this. So yeah, it's scientific. And the more precise, it's like with any science, material or spiritual, the more you apply it precisely with the right intention. Here's the thing. If my motive by applying this is that I just want salvation, I want this, you promised me, Prabhupada, that if I chant 16 rounds and follow these rules, I'm going to get liberated. That's not the motive of a true devotee. It's not true devotional motive. That might be there. We might come to the process with that, but by following the process, the science, with the right mood. What does Hare Krishna mean? Oh Radha, oh Krishna, please let me serve you. Take me back. I've been a rascal here so long in this material world. Please take me back. Please engage me in your eternal service, loving service. That's the right mood. If I just chant it mechanically, or with the motive that, okay, if I do this, then I might get second initiation. And then someday I might get sannyas. And then someday I might be a GBC. Right? Corporate climbing. That's another thing that we can bring to the process to make it mundane. Therefore, Vigyan Maharaj says how to avoid turning ISKCON into a religion, a mundane religion. Okay, and also, because there were no books in those days, but Prabhupada embodied Krishna consciousness. Therefore, it was, as Prabhupada would say, no dry philosophy that ends up with the conclusion of impersonal or void. Therefore, we saw that Prabhupada, he loved to chant. He loved to chant. As one of our members once said, who wrote a book about Prabhupada, blazing sadhus, never trust a Swami who can't dance. And it showed a picture of Prabhupada dancing in Calcutta. Amidst, he was being greeted and he was just dancing. Yeah. So now we're going to get a chance to taste that. Whatever we're bringing to the process, we can all just relish. Kirtan Ras, the safest place to be in the material world. Thanks for listening. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.